Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I'm Dan Sams.
And we're back after having missed a week.
Yep. Sorry, everybody. That was my fault. So
apparently Tennessee has internet worse than third world countries, according to Dan.
I have been to countries that are labeled third world that honestly have better internet than what I have in Ohio anyway. But man, we did vacation in Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area, and it was a good time. I like being down there, but holy cow, my phone internet wasn't working. Apparently they have a dish-based internet at the cabin we stayed at, which meant didn't really have internet. And it was pretty rough. About the worst internet other than not having internet.
Now, how far away is that from where you live?
Maybe like 8 hours.
Did you drive or do you fly? How do you get there?
We drove. Yeah. So interestingly enough, we drove down. It was like, it's solidly 8 hours. You know, we stop and eat. And so 9 total. Coming back though, man, I'm telling you, like the staffing shortage that everybody's having is doing something to our culture. We would try to stop and get food and, you know, the wait is crazy long or there's not enough people. Bathrooms aren't getting cleaned. It was a heck of a time to travel. And then for some reason, just traffic was awful. What should have been an 8-hour trip ended up taking like 12 hours.
Wow.
So that was unfortunate. Made the trip back not as much fun, but it was like everywhere we stopped, we're just like, what the heck is going on here? Tennessee itself wasn't too bad, but coming back, man, and every place down there was like, yeah, we're short of workers. We're trying to hire. But coming back, man, there was just something weird. Every place we stopped, it's like we're in this dystopian reality. It was not good. Yeah.
I love it. We got a guest on the podcast.
He just comes in and says, good job. Like, thanks, buddy. So yeah, it was kind of weird. Like we're, and I'm having conversations with people who are actually working in restaurants and whatever. And I noticed like they're struggling. They know that they're not providing the best service. And so I'm trying to be extra nice because I'm like, listen, I know that they're basically paying people to not work. So I'll tell them, I'm like, listen, I know you guys have it hard. I recognize it. My respect is to you for coming out to work. And they're like, oh, thank you. We need to hear that because it is nuts right now. And they'll tell us the story of like, we're supposed to have 10 people working. We have 6 people working and we're trying to hire people. Everybody's got signs up for hiring. And I'm like, yep. This is part of the plan right now. This is somebody's doing this on purpose. And I think it's part of the great reset stuff that these clowns are trying to enact. But and part of me doesn't blame, like I can't not work. Like I don't want to be a lazy bum. But it is interesting. If I was making $15 an hour in my main employment and I realized that I could effectively have $20 an hour if I didn't work, I'm going to take that incentive. Of course. I mean, that's what people are doing. And so I don't think it's right, but I also understand like they're responding to incentives. This is why you're not supposed to get involved in the market.
The other thing too, that I find really interesting, and I think is going to compound this problem or at least drag it out even longer is the child tax credit that just started this month.
Yeah, we got it while we were on vacation.
Dude, I was like, I got it. And I'm like, oh, crap, dude. I didn't think I qualified. I mean, I don't even know what it takes to qualify. But I use that every year because being self-employed, I pay taxes, right? Like there's nothing taken out of my check. I got to pay quarterlies and I got to pay a big chunk at the end of the year. So I want that credit. And so my wife was like, oh, cool. We're going to get $500 a month. I'm like, no. That goes into the tax fund because we just going to give that right back to the government.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
well, this is, yeah.
other people who aren't in that situation, I mean, that's, whatever it is in their case, 3 to, plus 100 a month. It just depends on how old their kid is and how many kids they got. I mean, it can go up. A buddy of mine's got 6 kids. I'm sitting there going, the math in my head. Wow, dude, he's.
Yeah. We got a little chunk of money. Yeah. Now, of course, the more that money is getting thrown around, the less it's worth. I mean, thrown around in the sense of like, they're just effectively, for lack of a better term, printing more money. We've got issues with inflation and all this kind of stuff. And but think about what's happening here. People are being put in a situation where the dollar is worth less, but you are getting money from the government, now more money in some cases than you get from your employer. So the incentive then is to put yourself in a position to depend on the federal government, right, rather than your own ability to work, rather than your own hustle, rather than your job. And this is absolutely intentional. And it's not a conspiracy theory. Like, just look up the stuff that they have all published on the Great Reset. They're not even hiding it. Like, this is part of the plan. And yeah, it should concern us. I wish there was something else we could do. We actually, on the way back from our trip, we listened to a John Grisham book, which is funny. I always he's an easy,
right.
You're going to be entertained, right? It's some of them are better than others, but you're not generally going to be completely disappointed by a John Grisham book. So we're listening to this John Grisham book on the way down and on the way back. And then we realized we have like 3 hours left. And I say something to my wife about like, well, why don't we listen to one of the old classics? And she's like, all right, let's listen to Animal Farm. And so we listened to George Orwell's Animal Farm, and it was, I mean, I'm familiar with it. I've listened to it before. I
read it as a kid, sure.
But to read that right now during all of this, and like specific political figures come to mind. Like, yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with Animal Farm, you need to read it. It's a quick read. I mean, you can download the audiobook and it's like 3 hours long. But an incredible book.
Which I got to say is, where were audiobooks when I was in school?
Yeah.
I would have never missed a book report. I would have just listened to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love having stuff read to me, especially when I'm driving, making good use of that time. Also, it's kind of good for you. There's something cool about it. I listen to a lot of books that way. But anyway, Animal Farm just made me think of all this mess that's going on. And it's related to our main topic today. The whole way in which information is controlled, the dependence or the perceived dependence that's created is on your leaders. And in the process, the leaders end up getting treated differently, more comfortable, and this is what was happening on Animal Farm. And all the while, they're controlling the information. And anytime something comes out that's inconsistent, they're like, oh, no, don't worry about it. And then they have a group of sheep whose job it is to repeat a saying and drown out anybody who shares any concern. It's totalitarianism, and we are stepping right into it right now. So, yeah. So should we jump into the topic, Pete?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm sure our listeners, being the kind of wonderful, freedom-loving people they are already aware of the censorship stuff that's coming out. Essentially, the Biden administration is acknowledging, and I forget which day it was, but in a press conference, they were acknowledging that, they're working with Facebook to flag things that they deem, quote unquote, problematic.
Misinformation. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also know, by the way, it's worth kind of looking back. We know that during the election, Facebook was working in tandem with the Democratic Party, with the Biden campaign at the time, now the Biden regime, to control some of the information that of course benefited them. Now they're in charge. And so I always like to point out, we know that they were manipulating things before these guys were in office. And so now we have effectively, it's like the propaganda arm of the Communist Party, essentially being in control of these things. And we're seeing a very bad effect. Now that they're in control, they're stamping out opposition with more fervor. And so we should be concerned about it. So you got some thoughts on that, Pete?
Well, obviously, it's incredibly disturbing that on so many levels, it's disturbing that they're evading the Bill of Rights and blaming it on, well, they're a private company. I mean, we're flagging stuff, but they're a private company and they can do whatever they want. No, they're acting as an agent of the state is what they're doing. Yeah. And I mean, I was mentioning before we started the podcast, I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine on Facebook. And I use the term buddy loosely. We know each other. We knew each other in college. Yeah. I don't think we liked each other in college then. And I'd say it's gone downhill on Facebook since then. Like I called him, I go, dude, you are such a liberal or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I said. And he goes, oh yeah, I'm so liberal. I'm like, dude, you're for big government. You're for government interference. You're for government restrictions via COVID. You believe that the election was totally done in integrity. I'm like, you're a freaking liberal. Like, shut up, dude. You're 100% liberal. Oh, and like, he doesn't believe in carrying a gun. He doesn't believe that we should be like, this is from like a year ago. I'm like, dude, I work security at my church for the kids area. Actually, it was a couple of years ago. He's like, that's just so wrong. And I'm like,
what? So wrong?
As a Christian, he's saying, oh, it's wrong that you're relying on a gun to protect the kids. I'm like, but if someone comes and attacks, aren't we going to call someone with a gun?
Yeah.
Like, am I not supposed to call the police? Because I'm supposed to rely on, like, God gave me these tools. He made me good at this, but I'm not supposed to use that. That doesn't make any sense. Like, anyway, that'll get me off on a whole nother tangent.
Yeah.
And it was funny too, because one day I saw him show up at my church, him and his wife. And our church, the building's used by like 3 or 4 different churches. And so I think he was going to the Thai church, and he saw me and I saw him, and I was like, I'm carrying a gun, so I'm not even going over by you, because you're just going to be stupid about all of this. But he was just like, oh yeah, Facebook's not acting as an agent for the state because they don't arrest people. They don't stop people from saying stuff on other platforms. I'm like, dude, that's not what it takes to be an agent of the state.
Yeah. That's like saying that the informants, that were outing you for hiding Jews in Nazi Germany were not agents of the state because they didn't actually come and take the Jews to the death camp. They just informed on them. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh man. So one of the things that I know it sounds like your friend mentioned this, or your acquaintance, or your whatever you want to call him mentioned this, but I see even in libertarian circles at times, people will say, oh, Facebook's a private company, so they can do what they want. Don't try to get mad at them. And I want to point out a few things related to that. One is, if your government is telling you to do something and you're complying with it, and it relates to the manipulation of information, you're already over the line. So now I would say this similarly about like Google. We know Google was modifying way back years ago. They were modifying search results related to Hillary Clinton to, lower anything that related to her criminal activity, right? And you could do the check. You could do a search on Bing. You could do a search on whatever other platform. You did it on Google, and you had to type in every letter of Hillary Clinton criminal. Otherwise, it was going to suggest anything else, ridiculous things. And so one of the things I'll point out, and you and I both run ads for a long time. I was running ads for a particular client. We were putting a whole lot of money in Google ads. We have other clients that do Google ads at lesser, but one of the things we've noticed now is Google does not give you truly organic results. They control it for things like political candidates. They can vary certain things. If they decide they don't like you, they can control that. So I think about if I went to the library and I said, hey, I need books on this, and the library intentionally does not show me certain books that they happen to not like. Now the library is not functioning as a library, right? And people will say, well, Google tells you when they're promoting the ad stuff. And I'm like, yeah, they do, but they still will show you more in the organic searches of the stuff that's also running ads. And so I'll point out, like, now they've moved into, they're no longer doing what they as a business say that they're supposed to be doing. Right. So, yeah, they're a private company, but now you're moving into the issue of, if you are not doing what you present yourself as, you're in the realm of, you want to call it fraud, you want to call it bad business, whatever you want to call it. So it is with Facebook here. If the idea is that this is a social media platform where we can share ideas freely, which is one of the things that Facebook has billed itself as, that, hey, you get to share information, you talk to your friends. But now if they're saying, we're going to work with the government and we're going to control what you see, and we're going to keep certain things that we deem inappropriate away from you, well, now they're no longer doing what they say they're existing for. And so, in addition to being an arm of the state, they're also not functioning as they're supposed to. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That's my other issue in all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's an interesting time that we're entering right now, because, I mean, there's so many things that are coming down the pipe. Like, supposedly the Arizona audit of Maricopa County is coming out. I don't know if you've been reading about that. It's pretty interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
But it does, to me, in my mind, it begs the question, how long are they going to let Biden stay in as president before they yank him and put in Kamala? Like, it's a matter of time. He's not lasting 4 years. There's no way he's lasting 4 years. The dude is senile. And it's just a matter of time. I also saw over the weekend, I think it was over the weekend, an article. I didn't even read it because the headline, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? New Russian papers discovered that show how the Kremlin wanted Trump to become president to disrupt the United States. And I was like, are we still back on this crap? Really? We still got to hear this? Trump's a Russian agent. It's like, come on, guys. I don't know, man. There's so many crazy things going down.
One of the funny things to me is they're spending so much energy trying to blame Trump for stuff when he's not president right now. And that's becoming increasingly difficult.
Obama did the same thing. I think Biden's just taking a play out of Obama's book. I remember literally Obama had been in for like 7 years and he was still blaming Bush. And I was like, dude, you've been in for 7 years. Shut up about Bush. It's your fault.
Well, you know what this is like, though, and I'm gonna pull in the reference to Animal Farm again. There is a fear issue in that if you can demonize the last guy and keep this fear up that, like, well, if you don't do what we say, he's going to come back. And that was in Animal Farm. The whole thing is like, you don't want Farmer Jones to return, do you? And that was always the death knell. So whatever was going on, they could blame it on Jones, who hadn't been there in years because they ran him off. But they could always say, like, but he might come back and he's going to do more of that bad stuff if you guys don't keep doing what we say. And it's the same thing. It's people will respond a lot better to fear of the unknown or fear of whatever somebody else did than they will to, hey, my policies are bringing about something good. And quite a time.
Yeah. Anyway, on to some gun news here. We're expecting, let's see here. I'm just trying to see if they're giving us a date here of when we can expect this ruling from the Ninth Circuit. I've heard it's coming either by the end of the month or within a month, and that could be just totally wrong. But our magazine ban, right? This is something that we've talked about before on the podcast. We had a federal judge say it was unconstitutional. We had what we affectionately refer to as Freedom Week, in which millions of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds flooded into California, pissing off, our attorney general at the time, because they can't tell, did you just get it during Freedom Week? Did you buy it illegally? Did you import it illegally? Right. So everyone just says, I got it during Freedom Week. Yeah. And of course, I know so many guys who are like, hey, I've kept my receipt so I can prove it. And I'm like, why do you have to prove it? Like, we had a case recently within like the last 6, 8, 9 months, something like that. This we talked about it on the podcast. Actually, this guy in Ventura County, his roommate was on parole. He was gone. His parole officer comes over, asks to search the house. The parolee says, "Sure, go ahead." Goes into this other guy's room who's not on parole. Finds out he has, I don't know, a 30-round magazine. He gets arrested. They charge him. And it takes like basically all these good guy attorneys going, no, we had Freedom Week. Because what was his claim? I bought it from a private party during Freedom Week. And finally, they just said, all right, we're going to let it go because of Freedom Week. We can't. I mean, but we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. We don't have to prove our innocence. You have to prove our guilt. And we've totally gotten away from that. Well, anyway, so that was the federal judge. And then, of course, it got stayed and went to the Ninth Circuit Court, went to a 3-judge panel. 2 out of the 3 judges says, no, you're right, it is unconstitutional. So then it gets appealed again. It goes to the 11-judge panel. So we're not sure how it's going to go. There's 7 judges appointed by Democrats and 4 that were appointed by Republicans. So if you look at it like that, you're like, it's probably going to go liberal, and they're going to say, no, it's constitutional. I've heard that it's as close as 6-5, and all it takes is, flipping 1 or 2 judges in the other direction, and all of a sudden this could be good. Mm. But from what I've been told, like I did a handgun challenge last Thursday, and what was being passed down is that the state of California is getting pressure from other states like New Jersey that have magazine bans and are saying, you guys lost this case. You need to walk away. Do not let it go to the Supreme Court. Same thing they did, right, with what was it, DC, the DC case, where, DC's basically got said, no, you have to allow people to have concealed carry permits. And they're like, whatever you do, don't appeal it. Don't go to the Supreme Court, because if it goes to the Supreme Court, it's the law of the land for everybody. Right now, it's just your jurisdiction. And so these other states don't want California to appeal it and let it go to the Supreme Court. They just want them to walk away and, let California have its 30-round magazines, and so they don't lose theirs. So, I mean, that's how close things are right now. So it'll be interesting to see how it rolls out, what comes down, and then if it does go to the Supreme Court. I mean, certainly if it comes out that no, they're going to say it is constitutional to ban standard capacity magazines, then obviously we're going to be appealing it to the Supreme Court. And right now, will the Supreme Court listen to it? I mean, they got 2 gun cases they've already accepted for the first time in 10 years. So who knows? Maybe they say, no, we will accept it.
This could go well. This could go the right way. Let's hope so, man.
Yeah.
Exciting. That's it is interesting how, as we have totalitarian stuff clamping down, we've had some positive movement in the courts, and so we can be thankful for that, and we can hope for some positive changes here. We'll see.
Yeah.
Interesting times on that.
The other thing too that I found really funny this last week is Texas. All those Democrats who were fleeing the state so they wouldn't have a quorum and couldn't vote on voter ID.
Yeah, man.
So far, it looks like 5 of them have contracted COVID in their mad dash to leave the state, which I just find absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. So there's so many layers to this. First of all, the fact that they were trying to flee, as you mentioned, to keep a quorum from happening. They flew together on a plane without masks, right?
Or at least for the picture.
Right, which
is good enough.
And I'm like, you know what? I flew not that long ago. They still make us, regular people wear masks. So here you have elitism, political elitism, where they think the rules don't apply to them. The fact that they bit them in the butt and they end up having COVID. I mean, I don't want to wish ill on people, but I do like people getting their just desserts, and that seems to be what's happening here. And holy cow, the whole thing. And well, then about the thing about the governor saying okay, we'll arrest you when you come back, which is perfectly legal. And I'm really interested to see how all this plays out.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that's happened either. I mean, not just in Texas. I mean, every once in a while you hear about, some state, all their representatives are leaving the state so they don't have to hold a quorum and then, can't be arrested wherever they're at. And, I find the whole thing interesting, but I also find, the whole voter ID thing. I haven't read these bills, right? So I can't speak intelligently on the bills themselves. But of course we need voter ID. Like, to say to me, we have to have vaccine IDs, but we're not going to have voter ID. There is an insanity there that makes no sense whatsoever. Like, if you're okay with vaccine passports, but you're not okay with someone having to prove their identity to vote, you have deep issues. Like, you have seriously deep issues.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Man. It doesn't. Well, and the same thing with so I'm supposed to go through all this rigmarole to buy a gun, but not to vote, to change the laws related to those guns. It's insanity. It really is. So, yeah.
I got a lot of problems with a lot of our stuff and stuff that a lot of conservatives are all in favor of. I'm not. Like, I'll give you an example. I think we've talked about it on the podcast. I'm not in favor of ex-felons not being able to vote. To me, that's taxation without representation. They're out, and our society, once you've paid your debt to society, you're done. And we're not supposed to be holding stuff over your head like Jean Valjean for the rest of your life. We're supposed to allow you to move on with your life. Yeah. So why can't they vote?
Yep. Same way with, I think they should be allowed to own guns. They should be able to vote.
That's a constitutional right. Why do we take away that right?
Why does especially when people still don't realize how easy it is to commit a felony and not even know it. Or how easy it is to be railroaded into a federal prison, as we've talked about on here before.
Yep.
It happens far too easily. And then even if you were guilty, you paid your debt, you do your time, you come out, you should be able to live as a regular old citizen with the freedoms of a citizen. That's as simple as that. So, that's a whole lot of things that need to be changed up. So I do have a little fun story here.
Let's hear it.
That's not 100% related. So, of course, while I'm down in Tennessee, the freedom is stronger in Tennessee than it is in Ohio. And we've got some freedom going on in Ohio.
Now, where in Tennessee did you go?
Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg.
I don't know where that is, but since I'm scouting out places to live that are not this state, should I be considering that?
Maybe. So Smoky Mountains is where it is. So Smoky Mountains. Seriously, if you're scouting out other places, you should consider Tennessee's not bad. Kentucky, depending on the location.
I couldn't get my wife to go to Kentucky, but I would go to Kentucky.
Honestly, West Virginia right now is on the right track, and not just because it's my home state, but they're removing the state income tax. They're doing all kinds of things to grow commerce. They're pro-gun. There's a lot of potential there. Missouri is worth looking at. Florida is worth looking at. Texas, of course, worth considering, although I'm not in 100% agreement with everything Texas. But I think we've talked about this before. We really ought to pay attention to what states are doing what, because what we need is, again, doctrine of lesser magistrates. We need governors and local sheriffs who will refuse to enforce unconstitutional laws. And so now's a good time to be watching who's on the side of freedom and be ready to pick up and move, man. We're watching to see which way Ohio goes. I don't want to just move my whole life, but this conversation we had yesterday with some brothers, okay, what are our scenarios? What might they look like? What might we need to do? Anyway, though, all that said,
why is Ohio on the fence? I don't know much about what's going on.
Ohio is a swing state. And we have a Republican governor right now who's Republican in name only.
Right.
He's maybe not been as bad as some of these other governors, but he certainly hasn't been a bastion of freedom. And so Ohio, you just never know quite which way they're going to go. And so we're it's worth being attentive to see what happens there. West Virginia would have been a unique one, swing state, but would have been in many ways very Democratic. We've had a complete flip in West Virginia, wildly so. And so kind of an exciting place to be. West Virginia is just making a lot of moves towards freedom, and would have always been pretty pro-gun-ish.
What's the weather like in West Virginia?
You get a little bit of every season.
A little bit of snow or a lot of snow? Not
very much snow. So the West Virginia, a heavy snow would be 4 inches, and it wouldn't happen very often. You'd maybe have twice where you'd have very much snow like that in a winter. The one thing in West Virginia that you got to be attentive to is ice, because it doesn't get crazy cold. It gets down into the 30s, and you very seldom have anything down in the 20s. But what happens is you'll have your coldest days your winter days tend to be hovering around 32 degrees. So you have a little bit of melt and ice, and ice becomes the issue there. But you don't have harsh winters. You got a nice summer. You got a beautiful fall with rolling hills. Spring is nice. You do get a little bit of everything. If anybody would have a complaint, it would be you don't get as much snow as you might in Ohio. And if you like snow, you're going to get less of it, or you're going to have to drive up the mountain to a ski place to enjoy snow.
What's ironic is my wife works in an ice rink, yet she doesn't want to live anywhere where it snows. So I'm like, I want a little bit of snow.
Yeah. West Virginia is nice for a little bit of snow. You do get a little bit of every season. I miss it. It's beautiful. And your spring is a real spring, whereas up here in Ohio, it's still dreary in most of the spring. Anyway,
we have one season here. We have summer, 12 months a year.
Yeah. That would get boring to me, man.
I hate it. I hate it. Oh, everyone who moves here because of that. And I'm like, I want to leave here because of that.
Yeah. Well, and you miss out on fall, man. Fall is my favorite season, man. You start having fall, even around here, but in West Virginia, people do apple festivals, and there's cool stuff happening, and the leaves change. It's just awesome. Here's what I was going to say, though. So I'm down there in Tennessee, and there's just more freedom-oriented stuff. You can find your Gadsden flags easy, your Appeal to Heaven pine flags, all that kind of stuff. But I go to Smoky Mountain Knife Works, which I do recommend, and they've got all kinds of cool stuff there. I end up buying myself a Leatherman tool. I needed one of those. My old one was in pretty rough shape, and so nothing fancy. Bought myself a Leatherman tool. It's got a nice little hook on it, so I'm carrying it around. And then on Wednesday, my wife and I go out just for a day, just the two of us. We left the kids with my in-laws, and we just went out for the day. And we're shopping here and there, this shop and that shop. And I go into this place, and it was called Lock, Stock, and Blade, just a small little shop that also had knickknacks and kind of rustic home decor, but then a whole lot of knives and other stuff. And I see that they have sheaths for your Leatherman tools. Leather sheath looks really nice. $5, done. Don't even have to think about it. I buy the thing. And so we're looking around. We found a couple of other things. They had this necklace thing that had a little pocket knife on it, like a real pocket knife, and it was pretty. We got one of those for my daughter. They had straight razors for a deal. I got straight razors. It was just a cool place to be in. We're looking around. We're having a good time. Eventually, we check out. I buy whatever it is, and I'm pretty sure it was this store. And here's the reason. I'm going to tell you why I don't know. But I buy all that stuff. We check out. I throw the receipt in the bag, and we come home. And so now it's after the trip. I'm going through. We're looking at all the stuff we got while we were on our trip. We're home, and I'm sorting through all my receipts, and I find this receipt. And I don't know if you can read it from there, Pete.
I can't.
But instead of the name of the company, it just says Epstein didn't kill himself.
Nice.
And so I spent whatever amount I did there, and I think it was that. I think it was that shop. I think it was Lock, Stock, and Blade. I'm not 100% sure, but I can't know the name of the place. I'm trying to go back and what time, what did I spend where? Anyway, I'm going through. They've got Epstein didn't kill himself in place of their company name on here, and I'm so proud. I think it was Lock, Stock, and Blade. I don't know. Whoever it was, way to go, you guys. Keep the truth alive. I was just so happy about that. So
that is awesome. I love the Facebook meme that I saw recently that said, notice Facebook hasn't fact checked the Epstein didn't kill himself memes. They're fact checking everything else.
Yep. They know better.
What I love is I got a warning from Facebook because I reposted this image that said Delta variant is just another term because not enough people are scared or something like that. And so Facebook warned me. Our independent fact checkers have said that that's not true. I'm like, dude, did you not read the meme?
Yeah.
It's funny. You're an idiot.
Funny. Well, they don't want you to be funny. They want you to repeat.
Yeah, I think the only reason why they haven't banned me is because I make sure my settings are set to private instead of public. And so only a few people actually see my stuff. And I think they just throttle who actually sees what I post.
There you go. Man, this is where we're at, man.
It's a weird time we're living in. Weird times.
I've lost anything else to say about it. I'm like, this is just really weird. Really, really weird. Oh, yes. Or I'll say it's quite a time. So that's what's going on there. Definitely recommend if you can find whoever it was that's doing the Epstein didn't kill himself message. I say check that place out. Enjoy. Good times, man. Anything else we need to cover today?
Just one last thing I'll just share with everyone. So last Thursday, I did a 2-gun challenge with Fast OC at Evans Gun World in Orange, California. And they got another handgun challenge only, so it won't be 2-gun, but most of them are just handguns only, coming up on the 29th of this month. So if you're in the area, definitely head on over to fastoc.com, check them out. I recommend signing up for that. It was a blast, man. I had so much fun on that. So I took my Ruger PCC as my rifle because I figured, why not just blow away one 9mm only. No need to bust out the 5.56 for this. Though we had, I think, more AKs that night than I've seen at a handgun challenge. Someone was shooting. It sounded like a 30-06, but I think it was a 308. Man, that thing was just stinking loud.
Yeah, man.
And it was a blast, man. I mean, I love handgun challenges. It's a time where you get your heart racing, and you got to be accurate, and you got to be quick. And there's going to be multiple targets. Usually involves movement. We didn't have a lot of movement because we had so many shooters that to save on time so we could get in enough stages. We just had like obstacles right in front of us. So we just had to move to one side or move to the other. But just a lot of fun, man. It's going from rifle to handgun and back. It was a lot of fun. I did a lot better than I thought I did. Like when they were reading out at the end of the night, who placed where, I was like, wait, what? They haven't called my name yet. So they read from the bottom as they go up. And so I was like, wow, man, I should have gone and actually looked at the holes in the targets, which is what I normally do. And I didn't. Everyone was so quick to tape it up so they can get the next guy going. I didn't get to see where I hit, but it was a blast, man. So much fun doing that stuff.
Good stuff, man. Way to go. I like hearing it. Yeah. And this is all indoor, right?
Yeah, it's at an indoor range. We're too far away from the outdoor ranges. Those are usually like weekend competitions you'll go to, and there'll be big competitions with huge stages. Phenomenal. I mean, that's where everyone goes for real fun shoots. Lots of stages, lots of running, lots of, you'll have steel targets, paper targets, no shoot targets. I mean, you'll have it all. And, but this is, it's done at an indoor range. We usually like to keep it around 12 people, just so everyone has enough time to get in enough stages to make it worth it. But I'm telling you, man, it's just a blast. Just an absolute blast. My favorite though, and I got the video on Facebook because I wear these glasses right here that have a camera, so I can record what I'm seeing, and then I usually have someone record me as well. My favorite is modified bill drill. So we got to hit 6 shots center mass, target in front, 2 headshots, mandatory mag reload, 4 shots to the left target center mass, and then Mozambique the target on the right. And it's just It's just fun, right? Because you're just going as fast as you can. I could have been faster, but I hadn't shot in like a month. So I just felt good with my performance, even though I wasn't as fast as I normally am.
Oh, that sounds like fun, man. I want to get into some competitions. There's not enough of that around here, ironically.
Really?
Yeah. I know guys that do real basic, like, like they've got a Texas Star and whatever, and they're doing competitions, but it's not a lot of movement from what I understand. And then these guys travel. Like I know of one not too far from me that seems like it's kind of a truncated, like they're in a really small range and do just kind of real basic stuff. And then the guy who runs that I know pretty well, and he drives all over, but man, he goes pretty far. Like it's like he's in Pennsylvania, he's in West Virginia, he's in wherever. And so it sounds like fun, but I'm like, man, I'm not going to be able to travel that much for it. Yeah, I think it would be a cool thing to see. Well, I'm hoping that news, we already know big stuff's happening with Lake Erie Arms, and I would love to see us start doing competitions out there. So that's, we're working on it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, man. It's good stuff. Oh, with that in mind, I will close out. I'll do both a plug for Lake Erie Arms and a fun story, Pete. So I was getting ready. I ran the email to promote Lake Erie Arms this week. They were running they're still running a Sig Sauer sale through today. So anybody who wants to get out there today, all the SIGs are on sale. So I came across a meme that I adapted for our purposes. And you guys remember in Jaws where the whole "you're going to need a bigger boat" quote. And so it's the dude from Jaws with a cigarette in his mouth, standing on the boat, right as it said, "You're going to need a bigger boat." And so what we did is we're like, when you find out that LEA is having a sale on all SIGs, but you still got to keep up that boating accident story. And so we put a SIG logo on the guy's shirt, and at the bottom it says, "You're going to need a bigger boat." So good fun from that. I will tell you, you have literally another 4 hours and 45 minutes as of right now to get out there and get your deal on the SIGs at Lake Erie Arms. Otherwise, check out learms.net. Big stuff's coming around. We're updating some stuff on the website. Exciting things happening. So glad to have you guys supporting the shop.
Cool. All right, guys. We'll be back next week with another episode. We'll talk to you then. Take care.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.